Yeah, and I think that's just an awesome way to go about life. Like, continue to control the things you control. Don't dwell on things that you can't, and just get incrementally better. And I think that's so important in life. It's so important in relationships with friends, with family, with people, like, just continue to grow and control what you can control.
I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am.
You're going to have to repeat that.
I'm not what I think I am, and I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am.
I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. But I am what I think that you think I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an issue. I don't even want to say an issue, but I think that's common among a lot of people, right? Like, you may think deep down, hey, I'm a good person. But, I keep hearing from people, or hearing through the grapevine, like, this is what people think of me. Maybe that's what I am, right? But deep down that you're not, but you don't really have that surety in yourself. And so you're just like, you know what? That's what everyone thinks I am. That's what I am. Like, I guess that's who I'm supposed to be, whether you agree with it or not, if that's your train of thought, that's what you're eventually going to become. And not necessarily good or bad, but I think it's better to be able to dictate who you think you are and be able to dictate to other people and portray truly who you are, to change their perception of you into like what you want them to believe, and like what you put out there. And I think that's important.
I feel like that is the perfect beginning, because it's all about mastery of yourself. And I think a lot of people, especially that 16 to 21 age, are not focused on mastery of self. It's usually mastery of a sport, mastery of a relationship. And I don't even know if there's that real true word of mastery there, because when I think of mastery, I'm thinking of an apprenticeship. We go back to that 10,000 hours that it takes to accumulate before you can actually call yourself a professional at anything, So I think with you, one of the most interesting things is you have always been, since I've met you, in this state of mastery of self, since it's freshman year in college, of in the dorm rooms to now. There isn't much of a difference of how you carry yourself, and still always putting other people first. If somebody's coming out of the door and you're 5 feet behind or in front of them, you're running to the door. I think that compassion, that mastery of self that you live with is so seriously rare to find people that's their main focus, is I want to be the best person I can be. And I think it's easy to get caught up in all the other things that are going on in that phase and falling into college and so forth. But why? Why is that what leads you? And why, tell me about the mastery of Tyler, what goes into that, and when, do you feel like that? Are you even consciously aware that that's what you've been doing, or are you just living?
Yeah, I think it really started just growing up. To answer your last question of is it conscious? I feel like there was a point in my life when I was growing up, when you're trying to figure out really who you are, whether it's middle school, high school. I feel like that was kind of the time frame for me. But you're just trying to figure out who you are, and you're malleable at that time. You're figuring out who your role models are, the way people carry themselves and how they're perceived among people. And, you're like, hey, people show a lot of respect to that guy. That's how I want to be. And for me, it was easy because mine was my dad. Always has been, ever since I was little. I always wanted to do everything he did. He still is. He's been invincible. You know, he has that presence about him when he enters a room. He's not going to be the loudest guy, but he kind of like commands your respect and like attention. And growing up, the way he carried himself, you couldn't meet a harder worker, a more selfless person. I mean, someone that truly puts like me, my brother, my sister, my mom above everything. And having that as a role model and seeing, you know, how much respect he had as an individual, I'm like, you know, that's how I want to be. I have a couple stories growing up. Like, he had a old classic car growing up, and he'd always work on it. And I just thought it was so cool. So his car was blue. I got a blue Schwinn bike. And he would go and he'd be wrenching on the car, laying under it. And I'm like, oh, I want to be just like Dad. So he'd have his blanket. I'd grab a towel. I'd grab a wrench, not wrenching on anything, but I'd be clanking the wrench around to make it sound like I was doing what he was doing. And then, you know, middle school came around, and my dad's always been a big guy. And he played football. He wrestled. He ran track. I wanted to play football, wrestle, and run track. He lifted a lot. And I'm like, as soon as I could get in the weight room, I'm like, Dad, you need to take me to the weight room. So he's always been that guy in my life that I'm thankful to have such a good role model, because I feel like that really shaped me into who I am today, and having someone that's so confident, hardworking, and doesn't really care what other people think. You know, he's gonna continue to do what he does because he's comfortable in himself. And me and my siblings joke about it now, because as he's getting older, he's getting his quirks to him, but he truly doesn't care. He's like, who am I trying to impress? He's like, this is what I like to do. I'm going to do it this way. And, you know, we sit there and shake our heads sometimes, but you just got to respect it, because that's just who he is. He's not out here trying to impress anyone. He's, you know, he's going to do things the right way, and he's going to do things the way he wants to, and he's not going to cause waves. And I think that's commendable.
Yeah. I mean, that all adds up when I look at you and I think about like that view and perception, like not only from me, because I may be a little bit biased in some circumstances, but from people that meet you for the first time, whether it's my roommates, whether it's new friends that come into town, whether it's a coworker, somebody that meets you. I think like everybody looks at you as this admirable, hardworking, not that you're nonchalant in your attitude of how you carry yourself, but in terms of that opinion of other people, and you saying that like that's from your dad. And I think in talking about like mastery, there's this level of apprenticeship of where you have to sit under someone. And usually I think that's for a term of about 7 years that they say like the ideal apprenticeship lasts for that. And, you know, most people get apprenticeships and working on vehicles or doing something revolved around sports, but yours being ultimately emulating those qualities that your dad had. Like, to me, I don't think there's more of a beautiful thing that you could spend like your childhood years doing, you know? And I think to most people, you look at that and you go, wow, it doesn't really pay dividends, right? If you're not looking at it, you're not walking into the mattress store and somebody goes, wow, you're a stand-up guy. How about half off for you today? You know, so most people go, why would I spend time on that? Like, I should focus on getting the money or getting the cards or getting the girls. And then whether I'm nice or not, people will come. But I think there's this internal sense of pride that you lead yourself with, and the fact your dad is the trickle down of you learning that. I think that's just so beautiful. What do you think is the biggest thing following after him has taught you? Like, has there ever been a point where you're like, wow, I've really, you know, gotten burned in this situation, or like been too vulnerable here because I was just always focused on being a good person? Like, what do you think? Has there been any pitfalls, I guess, to that leading?
No, and I think that's something that a lot of people can get confused. You know, I always try and carry myself as like a nice, like welcoming, warm person. You know, like whenever I see my buddies, I'm giving them hugs. I'm big on like saying I love you and stuff like that. But that kindness, my father also taught me to like stand your ground, you know, and he was never one to be like walked all over. And I'm the same way, where, you know me, again, I want to be very welcoming. I never want to come off as like trying to be a hardo, but I I don't put up well with like disrespect or people trying to take advantage of other people, or especially take advantage of me. That's just not something, that's where I draw the hard line, right?
I think it's important to note there that comes from not necessarily a sense of an ego, but a sense of what you've built up and not letting other people diminish that or take that away from you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those situations like, hey, I'm going to treat you with the utmost respect until you prove that you're not worth that, right? Or you're not, garner that respect because of your actions. So I think there's something to be said about that, and it goes back to like your values as a person, right? Like I never see going out of my way for someone as a chore or necessarily like a conscious effort to like, let's say your car broke down and you're like, hey, can you come get me? There's nothing in my mind like an ulterior motive of like, yeah, maybe if I go pick up Amari, like he'll buy me dinner, it's just like, yeah, I want to make sure Amari's all good. Like I'm going to go pick him up, help him out. I feel like at this point, it's just kind of who I am and like how I operate. For me, I never really felt like that was something that resonated with people,
The being a good person?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't valued amongst our peers growing up?
Not even that, but I didn't feel like I was doing something different than other people just because that's how, like I said, my dad operates. My brother operates the same way. I feel like it's just like a family thing. Like that's just how we all are. And
so when you got to college, did you start to notice that of like, wait a minute, I wouldn't necessarily do that. Why is this person doing that? Was it kind of a shock at all?
Yeah, I think the big thing when I got to college is you just realize people are so easily pressured into becoming something they're not, or trying to like keep up with the Joneses in the sense of trying to be someone on Instagram that they're not, or going to these parties because they just want to show face. Anyone that knows me knows like college that I'll go out when I want to go out. I'm not just because everyone else is going out and you want me to come out. Like if I'm not feeling it, I'm not gonna do it. And going back to talking about my dad, I feel like it was the same way. You have to be confident in yourself and like what you want to do, and I think that's important. So you see that a lot with people in college, and that's really where I started to notice just how easily persuaded people are into doing things that maybe they don't want to do for whatever reason. They, like I said, they want to show face places, they want to be seen, they want to be noticed, and I feel like that's not necessary if you're like cool with who you are.
In that college area, and I think just generally in that 1921 phase, you're so impressionable that exactly what you're saying, but some people fall off the other deep end of knowledge. People want me to go out. My teammates want me to go out. I'm going to start going out. I'll start doing this more. And they fall back on who they are. What do you think were kind of like some of your practices, or what helped you stay rooted, I guess, in that sense of like, okay, I'm going to stay true to what I believe, as opposed to becoming everybody loves me because I'm falling victim to what they want out of me?
I think it goes back to just how I've operated for such a long time. Like there was never a conscious decision to be like, nope, like this is who I am. This is why I'm not going to go out. It just was one of those things like, yeah, I got practice, I got school, I got something I need to do tomorrow. Like I'm just not going to go out. I'm not going to go out just because everyone else is going out.
Are you ever looking at that? Like what is the end goal, I guess, next? I guess some people, even myself for a while, I would look at somebody like that and go, well, you have to be striving towards something. Like you're not going out, you're sitting there, you're saving your energy because, you're, let's say, you want to perform well in the next game, or you're not going out because you want to save money because you're trying to buy a new truck. Like, is there an ultimate goal for you, or is it just the journey of being a good person that you're ingrained in?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a lot of things you touched on, you know, it's the money thing, right? If you have goals to buy a house or get a vehicle or do all these things, you know, we're all in college not making any money. Like, I have better things to spend my money on. But I think a lot of it for me came down to surrounding myself, like being in an environment with people that I want to be around. And I'm super big on that. You know, I've had my sin of like going to the bars, and it is fun. There's a time and place for that. But I'm that type of person where I don't need that. Like, I would much rather sit around the bonfire with the people that I really care about and have those good conversations and those laughs, and be at a bar. You can't talk to anyone. You're around a bunch of strangers. Like, that's just something that doesn't move the needle for me. And again, I'm not saying I never go to bars, but most of the time.
Somebody sent us a picture of you at a bar.
Yeah, right. Like, gotcha. As you said, you never go out. Like, no, I'll go out. And again, there's a time and place, but majority of the time, I just feel like that's not where my happiness comes from. My happiness comes from sitting around with friends, hanging out, like having good conversation, good laughs, listening to good music, and like truly being present with each other. Like, when I think back on college, some of my best memories were that kind of stuff, where it's only a handful of us doing something fun. It's not the night we were at the woods that none of us hardly remember, you know? So just for me, it's something that never moved the needle. And I'm not saying I'm a better person for it, or I'm better than the person that did go out every weekend. But for me, I never felt the need to go out because other people were. And again, it goes back to just how I was raised, like being confident in who you are. And, you know, if there's something you don't want to do, don't do it, you know, especially something like that. On the flip side of that, one thing my dad did teach me is being a man and being someone that people can look up to and respect is oftentimes about doing the things that no one wants to do, right? So for me growing up, I look back, my dad was always out of the house before like any of us were up. But we would come downstairs, we would have breakfast on the table, our lunches were made, and he was gone. He did his lunch, he did all the prep. And until I really got older and I started working, I never realized how much work he truly put in. And I was having a conversation with my brother not too long ago, and we were just like, we really do have the best parents, you know, thinking about all that they did for us. And that example came up. And so we brought it up to my dad. We're like, hey, you know, we just want to let you know we really appreciate you. And we were looking back on, you know, how you'd wake up, you'd make us breakfast every morning, you'd make us lunch. And like, did you enjoy doing that? He goes, no, I didn't enjoy doing that, but I'm your father. Like, that's what I have to do. And I think being a man and willing to grow is doing the things that you don't want to do, but doing them anyways. And that's something that I try and implement in my life. You know, hey, maybe I don't want to get up and do that yard work, but I take pride in my yard. I take pride in my stuff. Like, I'm going to get up and do that. And I think that's important in just growing. You know, you have to do things that you oftentimes don't want to do.
That's just so awesome to me that I feel like, I mean, I always say, like I say with my mom, like if I come back here and do it 10 times over, I'm choosing my mom every time. And I think like a lot of times, I think recently, I don't know where we were at, we were doing something and somebody gave me a compliment. And I think back to a couple weeks ago when I gave you a compliment about how hands-on you are, how you can fix this dirt bike, fix your truck, fix everything in here. And I credited to you, and you said, no, that's a product of my dad. That's how I learned that. And I'm the same way with my mom. Anytime somebody's like, oh, you're so smiley, whatever, I'm like, oh, that's my mom. You know, my mom sent me to public school, sent me to private school, allowed me all these different spaces. Like, the reason why I can have these connections and talk to people is because of her doing. So I think that's so beautiful to have that upbringing and to be able, I guess, to just like be this person that other people admire in even various senses, even if it's just, like I said, that you're a smiley person. and credit it back to something else that's at home. But I know for a lot of people, like that's not always at home is where they find that source, you know? Even for me, if it come in like primarily from my mom, as opposed to it being like, oh, like everybody in my family is like this perfect, like happy family. What do you think are some tips, I guess, if you have any, for people that are like, man, like, must be nice to have a perfect mom and dad, but like, I'm out here, like, there's nothing else for me to do except to go to parties, to talk to girls. Like, why else would I be a better person? Like, how am I supposed to get better? Like, what other things do you on your toughest days find to be helpful to being a good person or to being rooted in yourself, you know?
Yeah.
What do you use?
You know, it's like super cliche, but you really are who you surround yourself with. I've been super fortunate all the way up from middle school to college. You know, I have the best friends in the world. You know, I look back at one of my best friends. He's probably my longest friend, Ryan Kearns. I've known him since 5th grade. You know, I have my high school buddies. I have all my teammates from college. And we're all so like-minded and very goal-driven. And I feel like just good people. Like, all my buddies are good people. They are the type of people that I also strive to be. You know, I want to surround myself with people that I can learn from and I can grow from. And I feel like those are the type of people I surround myself with and can lean on when things do get tougher. I'm having a bad day, or, you know, maybe I'm not feeling too sure about myself, you know, and we've had countless conversations late at night of like, yo, I don't know what's going on.
I remember
just in this
sitting in that carport by I'll never forget that. I think that was one of like, I think me and you have like, I think there's a level in relationships too of chemistry versus compatibility. And I think as a guy, it's easy to have chemistry. You know, we can walk into any bar and start talking about an NBA game right now or a football game or talk about the draft. And that's why girls are always like, oh, look at them being best friends with each other. Like, it's so easy to have chemistry as a guys. But I think that compatibility to understand, like, do your morals align with this other man? And very seldomly in college, you know, does it. And I think that conversation that we had when we were standing up under the Meadows carport that day, that late night, I'll never forget that.
I think we were standing under there a couple hours.
Oh, it had to be hours. And it was like into the middle of the night that we were standing and talking. And I think
about everything.
Yeah. And it was a full, like, I think that's what, I guess, in relationships too, but also in friendships, which are relationships, there's a level of laying down all your cards. And I think very seldomly do people get to the point where they go, okay, I'm going to lay down my cards. There's always this level of trickery, or I'm going to suppress something enough, see what I can get out of this person, see what they're willing to give me, and then I'll open up. And I think that day for me was probably like a full recognition of like no smoke, where both just laid the cards on the table. And I think since then, like, I mean, you know everything. Like, a lot of people know different things about my life, but I think you know everything in real time as it happens. And I mean, when thinking about you, like, you were talking about like what people mean to you. And so when I'm thinking of you, this is what I'm thinking of. On our various journeys through life, we may encounter role models. They appear in the form of parents, a neighbor with the fast car, the manager of a local bakery, an athlete who acknowledged us when we were 5 on our way to the locker room. Whatever somebody's unique situation may be, they impact you, they inspire you, command your attention, and make you believe in something bigger than yourself. Sometimes we admire these figures from afar, or we lurk in the shadows, never truly admitting our adoration for them. And in some very, very rare cases, they're an unparalleled listener, a bright light on your toughest day. Somehow, some way, you get a full unlimited access card to their lives, and it's free of charge. Some people call it a role model, a twin flame, but to me and to the IRS, that's Tyler Cuckovich, you know? And I think for me, you know, I tell people this all the time, like, I always say, like, if I get married and I die, you're the person. Nobody else go take care of my wife. Nobody else can move with my kids. It's you. And I think that is so important to me, because I know we talk about little things throughout dating of, like, you know, if it's snowing, we'll go wipe off a car windshield, and you'll have moments where women or roommates or whoever are wow, it's not a thought, and I think that's so rare. And I think you're the only person I know that truly embodies it to the point where it's beyond me, where I'm trying to be like you and people are like, well, why do you do that? And I'm like, oh man, if you saw what Tyler was doing, like I got some more work to do. But in doing all that, do you ever get to a point where you're like, man, is this really worth it? Like I'm going to just start being like a less version of myself. Like I've been a good person long enough. Like what keeps you there and keeps you at that level as opposed to you just kind of falling off and being like, man, I can afford to skip some days of work this week. I can afford to not have the garage clean. I can afford to leave the truck how it is and just ultimately fall off. Why do you keep going?
Well, first of all, I really appreciate that. It's not oftentimes that, you hear someone say that they look up to you.
Oh, 100%. I say constantly to people that, once again, in doing this life 10 times over, having you not only as a friend, but also a role model is a very rare thing to conjoin for me. Of like, I genuinely look up to you as a person. Like, I genuinely will find something that I'm doing and go, Tyler wouldn't do this. Tyler wouldn't be pressed about driving 15 miles out of the way to drop somebody off at home at 2 a.m. So why should I? And I think it's that same thing you were saying of surrounding yourself about that. So like, that is less from an area of like I can't tell you how genuinely like you are the most like inspiring person I have around here to look up to, and like I genuinely model myself after you. Where I always say like Tyler's the white version of me, but he's a little bit better,
Yeah, I mean it really means a lot. Again, it's not oftentimes you can see yourself as a role model, and not that I see myself, but hear someone express that you are a role model to them. So I mean it really means a lot. But going back to your question of like, does it ever get old or do you get tired? And I think the thing for me is no one's expectation of how I should carry myself is going to be higher than my own. So for me, again,
that's a good one.
Yeah, I obviously hope that like you can appreciate what I'm doing, but in my mind, it's one of those things where I want to be that person that people can go to, right? I want to be the friend that, you blow a tire on a car or you need a tow, like I'll be there for you. Because I know I have people in my life that do that for me, and I want to be that person. I never see it as a burden, and I never, there's never a time where like, man, I'm just like spent doing this, because I know that, again, like my expectation of me and how I act and how I treat people, it doesn't matter how it's coming across to them. Like I wouldn't be able to sleep that night knowing you're stranded on the road somewhere. Like I'm gonna get out of bed and come make sure you're home safe. And that's just kind of the way I am with like people I care about. And I think that's huge. Life is all about relationships, and when you have people in your life that you care about, take care of them. And it's not something that's like conscious. I don't feel like it's something where I have to make a choice about. It's just something that I'm already stuck. I'm going to make sure he gets home. And, again, I know I keep harping on it, but that's the way my dad is. My mom will call him, hey, I got something going on with my car. Do you know what's going on? And my dad off the 10-second conversation they had, he's like, no, I don't know what's going on. But all of a sudden he calls her back 10 minutes later. Hey, I called 5 different shops. They think that this is probably what's going on. There's a shop right down the road that I called that like swing your car by. And it's like little things like that where to me that's normal, right? But to some people they're like, oh my God, you called like 5 different shops, and you're just like, yeah, like, are you good? Like, go take your car there.
See, that's the quality. Like, when I told you Elizabeth's car broke down, she got a flat tire. I think it was like months ago, whatever. And I left work went to where she was, tried to take her tire off, but it was too messed up. Called the auto shop I knew up here, the guy I trust, told her to take her tire, went back to work, did all this, right? And like, again, she was so appreciative, but I don't consciously, like there's no like brownie points in it for me. I'm just like, you're stuck. She's like, I'm not really stuck. Like, I'm in like a perfectly fine neighborhood. But then in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, like your day is inconvenienced. Like, I have to be there. I have to make sure that you're okay. One, I got to make sure you're not on the side of the road. I know you have other stuff to do. I think she was planning on going to the mall or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like her day is worse off because of this happening. How can I help her out here? And that's the part I think is so rare in finding in another person. And like you're saying again, like once again, like, I do it in scenarios as much as I can, but I know it's not something in which I do 24/7, 365. Like, I do have my times in which I'm not living up to par, I guess you could say. But I think that's what's important about having people like you around, is it sets that example and it sets that standard in life. And I think like something I read was, we first seek validation in those closest to us. Unsatisfied, we look for it in everyone, and ultimately we find it in ourselves. And I'm like, wow, that, like, you do start off looking for validation in everybody, or at least for me, that's how it was for me, is I'm like looking around, okay, so everybody's saying I'm good at this, okay, cool, all right. And then you start to ultimately, like, as people are fleeting, I guess, or you learn that those opinions aren't true, it kind of like diminishes. And then I think like the full process of the journey is finding the validation in yourself, which I think like luckily we both have come to find now. And that part of it, I think just for me, like moves mountains of, like you're saying, like, like the truck here, the dirt bike, the motorcycle, the Harley that's at the shop. Like, it's not for anybody else. And when you were talking about your dad saying that, I think that's such a large hurdle in your 20s, is not doing it for anybody else. And, it's so easy for us to delete Instagram or things like that, but I talk to people and they're like, how do you not have social media? Like, what? And I'm like, it
doesn't move the needle for me.
Yeah, who am I there for?
Right.
Like, and I think in having it, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I used to like find myself like, if we're here and we're like at a shop, like I have to post it because I want people to understand I'm doing something, or like if there's a really good moment, I'm like, man, I can't miss out on sharing this really good moment with the world. And I look back now and I'm like, I would just never post this now. Like, I would never post like stuff we do, like us going to the All Time Low concert.
Right.
Like I think a lot of people might have ate up that opportunity to get that one out there and get some points. But I was thinking about this for a while, and I know with you talking about your parents, if there's a gap in how our parents raised us, we look for others to fill it. If there's a gift in how our parents raised us, we look to others to give us the same. Do you ever think about, in relationships with friends or intimate relationships, that the gifts that you're describing, you ultimately hold others to a higher standard to give you that? And what do you feel like those things are, if applicable?
Yeah, for sure. It goes back to the whole friend thing. I have a good, really close group of friends, and I feel like we all hold each other to that high standard. And I think that's super important in a friend group, to have that, have the people that will challenge you. You and I have conversations a lot that maybe we don't agree on, but we're not afraid to disagree with each other and talk about it. And so I think it's important to have people in your life that you also hold to a high standard. If you're someone I'm going to give my time to, I want to have that mutual respect. I want you to be someone that I hold to a high standard and someone that pushes me and we push each other. And again, it's cliche, but like, you really are who you surround yourself with. And I think it's good to hold people to high standards because it ultimately makes them a better person as well. Like if I knew, for example, there's the neighbor struggling getting some drywall into his house, and I was just to sit here and be like, man, that sucks, and you were sitting here like, damn, man, that's like kind of messed up that you're not gonna go like lend a hand.
It doesn't even affect you to help.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's really like you walk a couple hundred feet across the street. Like I was telling Jace yesterday that I picked up lunch for a coworker on Friday or Thursday, And when I was there, this guy's like grabbing boxes, moving out. I'm waiting in line. I just stop and get the door for him. He like stops and he's like, thanks. He's like, that's just so rare these days. I'm like, man, like, boy, does that like,
it bums you out.
Yeah. Like, all I did was open the door for you, dude. You know, like, I didn't pay for your meal or anything. Like, I simply grabbed the door because his hands were full and he was like so moved by it. But I think like, I don't know, in a way, that's what I think ultimately is like the messaging behind like all this in the podcast and doing these things and having the open conversation is I think in a world or in a neighborhood of everybody who lives by those same things, do you agree that ultimately like makes life better? Like how much more enjoyable is it to go help the neighbor? And even if it is for 1% of self-gratification of like, yeah, I helped somebody out today. Like how much more enjoyable is that than just sitting and complaining, being like, oh, look at this guy trying to move all that drywall in there. That's going to take 4 trips.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's always good to be able to help people. You know, it's kind of like giving gifts on Christmas. I'm one of those people. I'm like, I get a gift for someone. I'm like, you sure you don't want to open it before? You know, so I think there's just something to be said about helping people, especially if you like your neighbor, you know, if they're good people. And it goes back to friends. Like if you have a good friend group, you surround yourself with good people, you're going to want to do things that help them, you know, that make their life easier. And I think that's important, you know, to be able to do that for people. You know, if you have the ability to, why not? It's like you holding the door. It doesn't take anything, you know, it's not hard to do. Smile at the guy, hold the door, be like, hey man, like get home safe, you know?
And it does more for me to have the conscious thought to do it and not act on it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Sit there or, you know, someone's walking by you and you smile and say, hey, you know, you don't know, maybe that person's going through some shit and you just smiling and saying, hey, like made their day. It's little things like that. Like, I mean, we can go on a whole tangent about this, but I just feel like people are so weird about normal human interaction and just doing little things like that. Like, bro, get off your phone, like look up, stop looking at the ground. Or if you're in the elevator places, it pisses me off. You know, every time someone gets in an elevator, they're on their phone. Like, how about you just have like, hey, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Like, hey, I really like your shoes. You know, and that's become the weird thing. And it's the normal thing to just sit there and not talk to anyone. And I don't know how I got on that tangent, but you know, it's those are the things. I like to surround myself with people that also do things like that. And I've always been a pretty outgoing person, but I look back on college and one of our good buddies, Raju, he was always doing something, you know, always like pranking someone or talking to someone random, being
Roger
like loud.
had a YouTube channel. He could be up 10 million subscribers.
Yeah, right.
Right now,
like if we documented half the things we did in college, like we would have been like Nelk Boys or something. You know what I mean? But that was just who he was, like every day. That was not a facade. Like there was no cameras on, just doing that kind of stuff. But you know, like it goes back to friends. Like being around people like that, he made me come out of my shell a little bit more. You know, and so I think it's important to surround yourself with people like that. You know, people do things that you admire. You're like, man, like doing something like that would make me uncomfortable. Right. And you're like, but I see like the reaction and, you know, the smiles he gets out of that. Like maybe I should do more of that. And it goes back to like a lot of the stuff that you do. I think back to, we went to a Michigan game and we were going to see my sister and her boyfriend, True. And you kept doing this like all day. You'd be like looking over and you just start waving and laughing and people turn around, there's no one there, and you like look away and you're like, who you guys looking at? You know? And I just remember True and Tara thought it was like the funniest thing. And then Tara said True started doing that to like mess with her. And so it's funny, you know, you pick up little things from other people and it makes their day, right? Like for them, they thought that was funny, you know, made their day like a little bit brighter, even marginally. But taking little things from like, you know, people you're close with and implementing into your life to make either your life better or someone else's life better, I think is important. And, you know, just being a normal person, because there are so many people, I'm like what? what's going through your head? Like, is anything going through your head? Like, why are you just socially awkward? Why,
You really wonder if that switch is on at all.
Yeah. Like the people that wouldn't hold the door for that guy carrying the boxes. Like, what? Why are you that way?
No, I agree. I think, and you saying like taking little things from people, like, I mean, there's more than a little things that you've taught me or that we've like kind of like crossed with. But like one thing, it's like, I mean, I would have never had a motorcycle and rode a motorcycle.
I tell that story all the time to people.
If it wasn't for you, like, I mean, that.
Should we talk about that story?
Yeah.
So Amari it had to have been sophomore year.
Yeah, I think no car at this point.
I don't think you had a car, but we had just gotten out of the dorms. It was that next year, and we were up there for the summer, and a couple of people got mopeds. Amari was one of them, and it probably went 25, 30 miles an hour, and he's like, man, it's so fun. I need to get a bike. Oh, have you ever been on a bike? He's like, no. And knowing Amari, if anyone knows Amari, he's like the most sporadic person. Like, he'll just show up with something one day and you're like, what the hell? Well, that's what happened with this motorcycle. One day he shows up, he took our friend Anna, him and Anna, and they went in her dad's truck, and he picked up this motorcycle, had no idea how to ride it.
Let's like, because also on this trip, it's still like, thanks to Anna so much for doing that. And like, we went there, I didn't have straps to strap the bike. So,
I didn't know that.
No, dude. We go there. Anna's just like the greatest person. She's like, yeah,
You're thinking you're about to just lay it down in the bed? I had no idea.
I don't know what I thought. I think I genuinely thought, like, if I get the motorcycle tire up enough to the back window, I can just close the bed. And it wouldn't move.
You're good.
So we get there, right? There's like this old like army vet. And he's like, so you guys like gonna strap it down to the truck? And I'm like, yeah.
For sure.
He goes, so do you guys got a ramp? I'm like, what? A ramp? I was like, oh, how are we gonna get into the bed of the truck? So, dude, Anna drives the truck like halfway down the street. The guy knows of a hill. Yes, and we end up running the bike up the hill. We get the bike into the truck. Mind you, it's like 2:00 in the morning at this point because we were not planning for all this. Like you're saying, I get so sporadic, or I used to get I'm a little bit more orchestrated now, but I used to get so sporadic. I was just like, motorcycle. I see motorcycle, have to figure out how to get the money.
I can afford it.
Yes,
okay.
I'm going.
Yeah.
We're driving to Indiana. Here we are, and did not think about any of the logistics behind it. Yeah. So we get there. We get the bike up there from the hill, and then he's like, do you guys have straps? I'm like, oh, no way. Those probably would help, huh? So, dude.
Shit, I left them at the house.
Yeah. Did they fly out of the bed?
Can't believe it.
So he straps the bike in. He's like, you got a helmet? I'm like, no. Gives me a helmet. I'm like, man, this guy.
The most unprepared.
Really saving my life here. So we get back. Anyways, now you could continue your story. I feel like I have to interject there of how we even got the motorcycle.
For sure. And that's a story I didn't even know.
Thank you, Anna, so much.
Yeah. But so Amari gets back, and I think he called me. He's like, hey, come over. He's trying to get me to come over for something else, right? And I see this motorcycle sitting it may have been like on the front porch of Meadows at that point. And I'm like, you did not buy a bike. He's like, I did. I'm like, have you ridden it yet? He goes, no. I'm like, okay, well, looks like we got to take the crash course and riding motorcycles now. So, we're putzing around. I'm teaching him the clutch. I'm like, okay, a little throttle, but, feather the clutch. And, you can tell he's nervous. I remember my first time on a dirt bike doing the same thing. My dad's yelling at me, and he makes you more nervous. I'm probably doing the same to Amari, like, no, do it this way. So anyways, yeah. And here he's got this CBR 600, which is not a slow bike by any means. I'm like, this kid's going to kill himself. And
200 mile an hour bike.
Yeah.
It's my first bike.
And I'm like, you get a little whiskey throttle trying to let out the clutch. I'm like, he's going to launch this through the carport. So anyways, after a while, he got it. Well, then over the next couple of days, I just hear him riding around Meadows in first gear. He wouldn't shift it. It just like off the limiter, going 20 miles an hour. And I'm like, oh my God. So I go over there, I go, dude, You bought the bike, ride it, you know?
I was not taking that thing out of the apartment complex.
No, you were all geared up,
Yeah.
helmet on, first gear. Wow, 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 wow. I'm like, oh my God. What? I'm like, so I remember sitting you down. I'm like, dude, you bought the bike, go ride it. I'm like, take it out on the, not Lake Michigan, what was that? The 48th? 48th Ave. I'm like, just take it out there. I said, the hardest part, you already did. You got it rolling. I said, from there, you're just shifting gears. And so he's like, no, I'm not going out on 48th yet. But there was a road between Meadows and Campus West, Campus View, whatever that was there. And so finally, he bumped it up to third gear. And, he's going just as fast as he was on the moped at that point. Like, finally bumped it out of first gear. And, then within the next week, he's driving up and down Lake Michigan. He's like, dude, this is so fun. But yeah, it's just a hilarious story.
That first time me going to Meyer, though, anything I've done in my life, I've never been so afraid. Like,
cars coming to hit you, or you dumping the bike.
I'm like worried about dumping the bike. I'm worried, like I'm doing like 70 now. So now I'm like tucked down. And, I don't know. I was just so scared. I remember like Rhea come over around like that first couple of times too and being like, have you ridden it yet? And I was like,
oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I got to see it on the freeway. Like, and
what do you think I bought it for?
What do you mean? Did I ride it?
Yeah.
Like, it's my daily
That's all
commute.
I've been doing.
Yeah. But that, I don't know, just so scary for me. But yeah, so like you got me into motorcycles. You're the reason why. Then, I got another one. Ended up broken collarbone, face shaved down to the knee. People still don't believe that. When I tell people how bad it was, like people are like, oh, like, I'm like, yeah, dude, like my hair was like gone, like my face was all cut up. I still got people still see this and like, what happened? I'm like, road rash. I'm flipping a bike 9 times. But yeah, I think that and country music too. Like I still think,
shout out Morgan Wallen if you're listening.
Shout out to Morgan Wallen.
Might be your biggest fan.
Yeah, I know, dude. You gotta I probably
what's the song, the one about the beer that's your favorite one right now? Beer in My Hand. That's Amari. You might have to come out with the cover. Maybe a duet with him.
I mean, hopefully we'll get to see him. What is it? Saturday? He's supposed to be here on Thursday, That was supposed to be the big break, and me being able to give him a gift and interview him. And
yeah, but I guess he lost his voice.
Yeah,
allegedly.
right. Lost his voice. Yeah,
allegedly.
But I guess he'll be back. So maybe that'll be a good time. But when we were at Back 40,
oh yeah,
I think everybody was rattled. They're like, "Yo, AJ and Amari, the only 2 black dudes in Back 40, are out here going word for word on Morgan Wallen songs." And it was funny. AJ, who lives in Seattle, texted me 2 days later. And he goes, bro, I haven't stopped listening to Morgan Wallen. I thought it was so funny.
Dude, that whole night after we left, the 2 songs before we left the bar were You Proof and then Last Night. And AJ, the whole ride home, was just like, I need something you proof. And it's like the only part he knew. And it was hilarious. He's like, man, Morgan Wallen's good as hell. And I'm like, yeah, you maybe should listen to more than just You Proof. Get some more lyrics.
It's so great. He was like sending me songs. I think like Broadway Girls. I think it was like obviously a big song everybody knows. And just because we like cross platforms there. But it's like, it's so cool to me that like you put me on the country music of like when somebody says like Dan and Shay now before, I'm like, oh, is that a movie? Like, no, I'm like, okay, I know who it is. Like Hardy, Ernest, all these guys. And like the Morgan thing is like so cool. And then now that AJ likes Morgan and like, just even the fact we went to Back 40 is just so, like, fun to me. Like, who would have expected that? But I think that's so cool. What do you feel like is, like, I don't know. I kind of tell you that, like, it's a thing for me where, like, I guess, like, Morgan's album, like, I was at the gym, like, lifting to his album. But there's not many other people besides Morgan, which is why I'm, like, when somebody, like, are you a big country fan? I'm like, I don't know if I'm that big. But, like, I know a lot of songs. And I was, like, talking to Adi about it the other day because he was even talking about, like, country music. We were like, when a song's good, it's just genuinely good. Like,
it's just good music,
yeah,
regardless of genre.
And I feel like that's how it is with country, and especially Morgan. Is like, his voice is so good and the lyrics are so good. Like, that's why when we were in the car and I was singing all the words to Beer in My Hand, I'm like, dude, like, I literally feel like I'm a country redneck, like, singing this song. Like, this is really
guy who
my
doesn't
life.
even like beer.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah, you're like,
beer.
this song resonates with me.
Yeah, but that's like so beautiful about it all. than what makes like Morgan's music or like country music in general so good. But I still like country music for me. I think like in a general gist of like a Randy Travis song or like something like that. Like it's more so like a boat vibe or an atmosphere to me than regular my daily life. Because I don't think, I mean, what age were we met? 18. I don't think I listened to a country song before I met you. You know. But what do you feel like you get out of country music? Because for me, it's like, bro, when Morgan's singing like 98 Braves, like I never even played baseball, but like I'm really like locked in on it. And like I think for me, it's like the visualization and more so him embodying what he's really going through or whoever wrote the song, and it being like almost like them being so vulnerable in it, of it makes it relatable in that sense. But what do you get out of country music? Like what makes it, why do you love country music so much? You just went to 8 concerts this month?
Yeah. I think the big thing with country music is the storytelling piece, like you were just talking about with Morgan Wallen, right? You're listening to 98 Braves and he's talking about that heartbreak and like how you were so close. I mean, that's something for you and me both that like we can resonate with.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the big thing with country music. You know, you just sit there and whatever kind of mood you're in, like I'm always down for sad country songs. And for me, songs like that, you know, they just hit you and especially if they resonate, right? Like the music is one thing, you hear like the beat, the vocals, and you're like, oh, he's good. But then all of a sudden the lyrics start hitting you and you're hitting like, you got it cranked up in the car. You just really, you know, it's like when you were singing Beer in My Hand, like just belting it out. You don't care who's listening. And that's kind of country music for me. You know, it's just that storytelling. You're thinking back to like memories, or, you know, you're thinking back to like bonfires with your buddies or memories with your ex-girlfriend, and all of a sudden you're like spiraling and that's country music. So
no, it really is. I'll catch Mitchell like in the shower just like blasting Morgan Wallen. I'm like, it's so funny. Like
what's he going through?
Yeah, you really would be wondering, like anybody that's listening to it. I think it's so funny too because he's talking from a guy's perspective, and I still meet so many girls who like love his music and everything like that. I'm like, it's so crazy that I think like everybody genuinely feels the emotion of like, he's not just writing the song, like this is like real life. And like for me, it's like that same thing of like me growing up of why I like Drake so much. It's like Drake wasn't just like writing a song to be like, oh, I'm trying to make it to the charts. Like he legitimately is telling you about this girl he went out with who like refuses to talk to him, but he sees her friends out and her friends ask about this. So it's like, whoa, like that's my life. So like
as you're in 8th grade, you're like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Like, man, those cafeteria lunchrooms, man. But no, I think that's so cool that like those are like 2 big things. Now that like one, like, you know, riding, I feel like it's just such like there's nothing I can compare to being on a motorcycle.
Nothing. I always tell it to people. People are like, oh, it's so scary. I'm like, yeah, you know, you take that risk, but I'm like, there is no other feeling than getting on a road bike and just riding. You know, nice night, whatever it may be. There's no other feeling. So I'm happy you were able to experience that. I keep trying to get him to get a bike, but he's dragging his feet on me.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely need something a little bit slower.
Yeah, get a Harley. We'll cruise. Yeah.
And being younger, there's always a thing I think about, which is perhaps you dislike a thing that's good for you. And I know something that we both relate to is disliking something that we thought was good for us, which is a relationship, coming to an end of people we thought that we were going to ultimately marry or end up with. What do you think is the saving grace of it all, of being through a relationship, of like through those tough times, of sitting, pondering what you could have done differently, pondering if there's something now that you can do to change a circumstance? I think that, I don't know, that quote just like really always rings true for me, is perhaps I dislike a thing that's good for me, and perhaps like distance and growth is good, even though I ultimately dislike it and it gives me discomfort.
Yeah. You know, obviously like breakups and stuff like that are terrible. And I know we've talked about this, just, you know, when both you and I have gone through breakups, and you start to sit there and think like, man, I could have done X, Y, and Z different. And something you always told me is like, don't beat yourself up about it, because in the moment, that's what was right, you know, and you can look back, and hindsight's always 20/20. You can say, you know, I should have done X, Y, and Z better. But I think the big thing to look back on with relationships, and I know, so what I try and do is just see it as a learning experience. And
it is really a journey.
It really is.
That really is what it is.
Yeah. And, my ex is absolutely nothing bad to say about her. She's a great person. She taught me a lot. And, I think ultimately we just weren't meant to be. And, but I don't discount those years that I was with her. And I don't think of them as a waste of time. I see them as years where I was growing and figuring out what I liked, and she was figuring out what she liked. And, ultimately we weren't the perfect match, but that sets you up for future relationships and trying to figure out like, hey, I remember I didn't like this, or, how I felt in this certain moment. So it sets that standard for things moving forward. And it's just like life, right? You go through things in life and change in life, and you look back on the experience, whether it's work, friendships, relationships, and you just have to see it as a growth opportunity, and, account for the good and the bad, and just grow from it. And I think that's huge. And that's something for me that I have struggled with is, I tend to see things through like a rose-colored glass. I have a hard time like seeing the bad, and not to say like my relationships had a ton of bad, but
it's easy to forget that.
It's easy to forget the reason why you ended up not being together, right?
100%. Or when you're in a better place, you can suddenly realize, now like, man, I could really make this work.
Right.
You realize you weren't in a space to make it work. It didn't work.
Yeah. And I think it goes, like I touched on it earlier, just the importance of relationships with friends. It's the same thing with girlfriend. Like, you have to have someone that is going to enhance your life and make your life better. And so I think, again, just going back to the growth piece, like being able to be with someone that's going to push you to be better. And
like we talk about that, the whole journey of it all and the whole growth, like, it's painful for us, but that's what ultimately makes you into the best husband you can be. Like, had you just sat around and not been in any deep relationships, or allowed yourself to be vulnerable, or allowed yourself to cry or get hurt by somebody, or to question what you're doing is right, you ultimately never, like you're saying, grow in those scenarios. And I feel like that's what I think at the end of the day finds me so much comfort, because I'm very much so, I think we're very much so this way of like, if like the first person we ever talked to could have been our wives, and we could have been 10 years deep right now, we would have liked that to be the case. I think there's very, very little joy out of constantly hitting reset, but I guess I should rewind there and go, it's not that it's not joy in it, but it's not the optimal thing. Like, I do find joy in like meeting somebody's parents for the first time and so forth, but I think optimally for us and like wanting to constantly go up, I think in the memories that we built, I always say like, it's kind of like when somebody leaves, you're packing up like the memories with it too, and just kind of like taking those to go, because sitting around thinking about those 24/7 aren't the most beneficial things for you.
Well, I think too, with you and I, we're fortunate in the sense that we haven't had like a bunch of toxic relationships, right?
Oh, no. I say all the time, like, my ex-girlfriends are some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. Like, we just didn't work out compatibility-wise to be perfect, but they are amazing people.
Well, and that's been the hard part, and you and I talk about this, is that standard's been set, right? And so it's like, man, I'm not trying to regress here. And but again, it's finding out what you like, and it's a good thing, right, that they did set the standard high, because like you and I constantly talk about in life, you don't want to settle, and that's for sure the case with a relationship. That's something someone you're going to have to go through life with. It's like a job, right? If you're not happy at your job, go find something that's going to make you happy. You don't want to just settle at the first job that's throwing you some money.
And I think so many people do that. Like, I say all the time, like, I know I sent you probably this paragraph text a bunch of times, but it's like a game of deal or no deal, I think, for a lot of people. And when you open up the first briefcase, it's $100. Being 16, that $100 feels good. And as you slowly progress, you get a $5,000 briefcase. You're like, all right, maybe, all right, you get the $15,000 briefcase, right? And I think once you do that and you get the $100,000 briefcase after opening up a 5, a 10, then a 10 grand, that jump from a $10,000 briefcase to a $100,000 briefcase, pack it up, shut down all the lights, I'm ready to go home, right?
Right.
But you forget that the $1 million briefcase is still out there.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
That's the one thing that me and you keep in mind is we're always focused on that $1 million briefcase. I'm never willing to check out or to be with somebody to satisfy my mom asking about a girl or something like that. I'm never willing to just take the $250,000, $750,000 briefcase, even when we're that close, because it's easy to take that $750,000 briefcase, go, man, that $1 million would be cool, but I'm almost there. But that $250,000, I think, makes a lot of difference when you really care about being with your soulmate and somebody you're compatible with. And I think that's a big thing that, there's a book called 8 Rules of Love by Jay Shetty, and he talks about, after these relationships, how many times are you sitting in solitude thinking to yourself, wow, what did I learn here? How could I be better? What did I learn I didn't like? And then the start of a new relationship, sharing that list. I think it's very seldom that people share that list off the get-go, afraid to lose the other person. Because if you meet somebody who doesn't like country music, right, this girl's not going to come out and say to you, I hate country music if she's attracted to you and you guys have a connection.
Yeah.
So now...
Oh, yeah, I know a couple songs.
She's
on Google.
Yeah. She's Shazamming everything.
I love You Proof by Morgan Wallen. AJ.
But that's the tough thing about dating is you get people who ultimately become people pleasers before they become true to themselves and love themselves enough. And I think that's something that me and you have in common is we're so solidified in the things we want. And, we made that list at one time. We texted each other at the end of our last relationships, and we said 8 things that you refuse to compromise on. And we hold each other to that. I sent you that again recently.
Yeah.
And, we hold each other to that list of these are the things that I refuse to compromise on in my next partner, no matter how easy this relationship is, no matter the chemistry with these person. If they don't have these things, and of course that list can be changed as time goes on, but it's if they don't have these things, then I will not be in this relationship. And I don't think many people our age are really thinking to do that. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not like I'm saying we're better than anybody else. I think if anything, I've just been hurt enough or gone through enough pain where I'm bro, not again.
Well, yeah, and it's just something we talk about often, even in meeting new people. It's I've met some great people, and it ultimately hasn't worked out. But something you and I talk about often is we believe that life is more fulfilling when you do it with someone else, right? And have a partner.
That cake looks a lot different with the cherry on top.
Exactly. And don't get into something just because you want a relationship. I'm at the point right now, I don't want a relationship. I'm enjoying doing my own thing, right? Having fun, going on trips and all that. But when you find someone that does enhance your life, it's like friendship, right? Like we talked about in the beginning of the pod, where surrounding yourself with good people makes all the difference. And it's the same if you're getting in a relationship, and I think it's important for people to be in a place where they're not searching for something. Someone just kind of comes into your life and you're like, damn, they push me on X, Y, and Z. Man, I don't know if I've felt this happy around someone in a long time, or man, I only get this happiness around the boys. And that's a big thing for me. I love just hanging out with my good friends and all that. And I think what I'm getting at is I think it's important for people to not be out there just searching to be with someone. It has to make sense, because when you're out there just trying so hard, hey, I need a boyfriend, hey, I need a girlfriend, you're just willing to settle for the first person that'll give you attention. And anything in life, you look at it from holistically, just life in general, usually those things aren't good, right? The easy thing. And whether it's a job, whether it's friends, whether it's a relationship,
whether it's a bike or something that you get, if it's coming too easy, there's usually a problem with the bike.
Exactly. Usually there's a problem. So I think it goes back to, coming full circle to the beginning of the pod, but you have to be comfortable in yourself. I think for your life to operate effectively, right? You have to become comfortable with yourself to be confident at work in your ability and to be the best coworker, the best entrepreneur, whatever it is you're doing, to be the best friend you can be. You have to be confident of yourself and to be a good partner. It's all important. It all plays a role.
Exactly. I look at it as you have to make sure your ladder is leaned against the wall before you begin to climb. And I just don't know if that's like always at the forefront of people's minds, because I can speak from experience here. It's easy not to think about, hey, am I in the best financial position to have a relationship? Hey, am I in the best mental position to have a relationship? Like, when you're not thinking about those things, you would genuinely go to, wow, this person's so attractive. Wow, I get so much validation hanging out with them from other people. Wow, we have such good morals that align, or we have such like habits or things like that. But I think making sure that ladder is leaned against the wall before you begin to climb is something I really like, because it's like, if you have no solid foundation individually, each of you, to build upon, then I think it ultimately is always going to come crumbling down. It's like, yeah, you can, build those things we used to build at lunch of like building the cups up high, right? But if you don't have solid cups at the base of it, you'll quickly learn that everything's going to come crumbling down. And I think now it's a lot easier for us to see in relationships. There's a lot more markers along that road. And I always say, like, I get it of if you had somebody that was a 50% compatibility match and you get the guy that's an 80% compatibility match, that you're just ready to go with it, because that 30% jump, just like the briefcase, is a lot. But I still always just look at it like, man, like, I can't at the end of the day wake up ever next to somebody and not be truly happy. And I think that possible guilt in that scenario is what promotes me to rather be single if it's not with a soulmate or somebody I'm genuinely compatible with. It's to lay next to somebody and truly think, just isn't it. But we're this deep in, so I'm just going to stay. I think like, and it's so, I mean, I've told you this before, but like, I'll meet people and ask people like, are you genuinely in love? Or like, is this person your soulmate? They're like, girls are like, nah.
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, especially getting older like we are now.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
like,
40.
No, I'm not, 42. But, it's just a waste of time. And I feel like that way in life in general, right? Relationships, friends, activities you don't like. Like, I am all for avoiding those things. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the mental capacity. It's like, hey, let's just be upfront,
Especially when you're using it to fill yourself. And I feel like if you're not using it to fill yourself, there's no ultimate need for it. If I don't need the relationship or need the hottest girl in the room to make me feel more valuable, and I already have those things, then in a relationship, all I'm searching for is a best friend, somebody to motivate me, somebody that I can like have respect with. Yeah. And I think, but I mean, in college, I can look back now and say like a lot of like short-term relationships were out of that thing of insecurity, where I was like, oh, like, I want to be with this person because I never thought like at 8th grade, like I would get this person to like me, or like I could get a girl like this, or like
all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, 100%. And it's one of those things where like it always floats to the surface. But I do think in the same breath, like the way I look at relationships now, and not everything is a stone in the water. Like some people are lily pads, and it never makes it less valuable to me now. Like I think when I was younger, I used to get perturbed by the idea of like somebody wasn't a forever person. Like the fact that people are there for increments of your life. And I think if you go into everything more concerned again with the journey of it all, as opposed to the end goal of this being a soulmate or being a partner, you can go off to Florida and meet some girl for 2 weeks and she can have a huge impact on your life. And that just might be what it is.
Yeah, that was her role in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
She might have taught you something about like coming to peace or something with yourself that you didn't get before, all from you going to Florida. And I think like we, maybe just as men or maybe as humans in general, we get so attracted to that idea of, I guess it is just an ego thing of like, this person wants to leave me. They don't want to be here. And then you start keep going of like, I'm going to send them 100 DMs, or I'm going to keep calling them because like I can't lose this person and ultimately lose myself at the same time.
Right.
But I think, I don't know, it's just always
like the why am I not good enough kind of thing.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I've been there too of like, man, how can this person leave? But I think like ultimately just finding comfort in like, man, that was a cool 3 months. But I think a lot of times in relationships, you get to that point where both of you guys know it's time to check out, but you end up staying an extra year because you don't want to check out. And you staying the extra year did so much more damage to you than the damage of you taking 2 weeks of being single and crying about it for 2 weeks and then being good. But I think that staying is just so tough. Do you think that like that's the missing piece now
in my life?
Yeah.
No. I mean, again, I think life is more fulfilling when you have someone to share it with. But there's a lot of things that, like personal goals I have for myself, like with work and things I want to do to the house, and that unless someone's going to come into my life and again really enhance it, I don't feel like it's a missing piece. I'm not yearning to be with someone. I'm fully content continuing to live my life the way I am right now. And yes, ultimately I want to be with someone, but I don't feel like I'm missing that piece of my life right now. I don't feel like in order to be happy I have to be with someone. I enjoy doing things like this, talking with friends and sitting around the bonfire and going on trips up north or down to Kentucky and then things like that, And if someone comes into my life, that's awesome, but I'm not stressed about it and don't feel like I'm pressed for time or, anything like that.
And I feel like relationships kind of, in a way, fall back to sports with me of like, there's like a certain love and tenderness that we have for things that we know won't last, And, our life is one of those things. Like there's a certain level of love and tenderness in being here on earth because we know ultimately it won't last. And same thing with some relationships. Like I would always say, like at the height of me being in love with somebody, like one of us is going to have to die first. And I think like, I always think about that with sports or something like that, where it's like, man, sports brought me so much love and so much joy for life and I can't have it for forever. Do you feel like that same way with sports and through life with you of like, there's that, like I said, that love and tenderness for things that won't ultimately be here forever?
Yeah, for sure. And I think life and sports and relationships, they all have a lot of similarities. With sports and with relationships and things like that, work, you have to be able to control what you can control. And it's tough to sit there when things aren't going your way. You're not playing to the best of your ability. You're struggling with injuries. You can feel that person slipping away. You're not getting that promotion you think you deserve. And it goes back to just taking it day by day and being able to control what you can control. And I had a hard time with that in college.
Because you played college football, for people who don't know.
Yeah, so I played at Grand Valley, and obviously I had high expectations for myself coming out of high school. And that first year in camp, I got a bad concussion. Didn't really know I had a concussion, started having headaches, continued to play on it. And it ended up being pretty bad. Anytime I was out in the sun, I was having terrible headaches, and so I missed some school. I missed a lot of football, and it wasn't a huge deal that year because I was redshirted. I knew I wasn't going to be playing.
Is there a bit of denial in the injury process? Because I know for me with tearing my Achilles and through basketball, for a while I was like in denial that I couldn't go play again or I couldn't run full speed again. So was there denial in that concussion phase?
Yeah,
like, I'm fine.
For sure. Well, I think that's why I kept playing. These coaches set expectations for you, and you set expectations for yourself, and you're like, man, I don't want to be that guy that's out, especially with a concussion. It's one of those things like, my leg's not broken or nothing's torn. It's just, I don't want to say it's just your head, but it's not something that you can necessarily see. But I fought through concussions, and I ended up having a heat stroke that ultimately ended up ending like my college football career. And, it's tough looking back to see the game that I really did love. And, I had a ton of injuries and all that, but I'll never forget Alton Voss. I was walking back with him, and he's been someone in my life that's I've always looked up to. He's been that person that always seems to be level-headed, always knows the right things to say. And he came up to me in camp. It actually was right after camp, after I had that concussion. He's like, how you doing? And I'm like, dude, just not good. I'm like, you put in all this work, and you try and take care of the things that you think matter, like working hard in workouts and getting out there. And then all of a sudden I got a concussion and I'm missing the first game of the season, and I'm trying to come back and I'm getting hosed for reps. And he's like, just control what you can control. And, make those 2 reps every day the best 2 reps you can. And, I think that's something that can be a tough pill to swallow, but I think it's something that's very true. Like, you can beat yourself up all day long if you think of like what ifs, but at the end of the day, you can only control so much. It goes back to relationships. It's like, you feel that shit slipping, you try and go be something you're not. You try so hard to like win them back, and it's like, listen, this is who I am. Like, I'm going to control what I can control.
And even in wanting them back in that space, we talked about that, it's always like, if somebody's not coming back and shows you can control, go be the best version of you that you can be. Go work harder at work, get in the gym more, control what you can control, because you can't control anybody else. So 100%.
Yeah, and I think that's just an awesome way to go about life. Like, continue to control the things you control. Don't dwell on things that you can't, and just get incrementally better. And I think that's so important in life. It's so important in relationships with friends, with family, with people, just continue to grow and control what you can control.
I think that's a mic drop.
That's a mic drop?
Control. I don't know what else I got to say there. Well, everybody, thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Divorce from Reality. If you guys don't know, my name's Amari Rose. This is my podcast, focus on overcoming insecurities, searching for purpose, and striving for joy. And I appreciate you guys so much for sitting down with this episode. And hopefully those of you that know Tyler were able to learn something more about him or see him in a little bit of a different light. And for those of you that don't know Tyler, you were able to find somebody that you can relate to, or some message or something that you can pick up on and hopefully share with somebody else, even if it is just You Proof by Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
He hits us up after this, like, hey, well, thanks for promoting this song. We got an extra 2,000 streams. But yeah, I appreciate this so much for you sitting down. I think it's so awesome of like, we're 4 episodes deep now. I think when I was first telling you about this, I didn't really know how far off the ground it would get. So I appreciate you sitting down with me. And
yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on. And, like I said, it means so much that I mean that much to you, and hearing you vocalize that, and, having just kind of a normal guy like me on your pod.
Billionaire.
Yeah, right. Says the mayor of Grand Rapids.
I love you.
Love you too.